On our top story, we've been discussing the issue of transfers of allegiance and the decision by the IAAF to freeze those transfers so far. Ethiopia have already welcomed the decision. For more on this story, we can now go live to CGTN's Dan Williams, who is standing by in Madrid, Spain. Dan, did the world body give an indication when the freeze will last?
Well, certainly it looks as though it's going to be here at least until August. That's when the IAAF Congress will be held in London. And certainly it's going to be very interesting to see what this working group comes back with in terms of their recommendations for a new set of criteria, what kind of elements of that new criteria, what that criteria will be. Of course, this is not really about focusing on the genuine people, athletes that have switched nationalities, like some of, say, Wilson Kipketer, of course, who famously switched from Kenya to Denmark, but of course was also studying in Denmark and certainly has followed through with success there. It's about trying to put a stop to this abuse of the system that we've seen, where agents have gone into schools, picked up on raw talent, and have then tried to flog that to overseas countries. That's really where the abuse of this system has really broken down, and that's really what the IAAF are most concerned about, as well as, of course, this element where if a Kenyan athlete is able to represent Kenya, or a Jamaican athlete to represent Jamaica, that is also carried through upon. So it really is trying to cut down on this abuse, and not necessarily those cases we've seen which are more genuine.
Dan, we have already looked into the cases of, for example, countries like you mentioned, Ethiopia and Kenya, but which other countries are likely to be most affected by this freeze?
Well, there are a set of athletes that are in the system, and they will not be affected by this freeze. It's not an immediate thing. It's about future cases. But certainly this is a phenomenon that's gone on around the world. I mean, there have been a number of British athletes who have been nurtured in Britain and have gone on to represent Australia, and we've seen this all over the globe. So it's certainly by no means an African focus solely. However, it has to be said that this abuse has taken place across Africa, and in particular the talent that comes out of Kenya and Ethiopia especially. To put that into perspective, 14 out of the 22 runners at the 2014 Asian Games, the winners there, 14 out of those 22 winners were all African born. So clearly this is an abuse that's gone on systematically, and of course it's to try and cut down on this element. But of course all countries, you might have heard the expression the plastic Brit, that goes back to when Zola Budd switched from South Africa to Great Britain. That has progressed as well. At 2012, the 2012 Olympics, upwards of 11% of the British team was born overseas. So this is of course going to affect all countries across the globe, but certainly it's about trying to make sure that if a Kenyan athlete or a Jamaican athlete is able to stay with their country, that they should be able to do so. Can you imagine if an agent had gone in, got Usain Bolt at 12 years of age and managed to turn them and flog Usain to Great Britain, for example, and what that would have done, of course, for the image of Jamaica and all of the feel-good image that we've seen with Usain Bolt and that association with Jamaica over the last decade or so. So certainly, where possible, the IAAF would like to see athletes representing their countries.
Indeed, Dan. Well, there is, of course, another aspect, looking at the repercussions of athletes in countries where the competition is quite high and changing of nationalities is the only option. Where does this leave talent that tends to fly under the radar?
Well, there is, of course, the argument that the talent rises to the top, and if they're good enough, then they will get there in the end. But of course, that this is a complex debate and area. For example, there are a number of people across the globe that make the most of US college scholarships and the like, and they go over. They don't necessarily reach the very top, the pinnacle, the Olympic Games, but they do then have a new life, a life outside of their country, perhaps in America or Turkey or Great Britain or anywhere, and that of course is an element which is always going to be required as well. So this is certainly a complex debate. Whether we will see, of course, that abuse, it remains to be seen. The IAAF are really focused on trying to stop, for example, an Olympic Games 10 years from now, say, where the top 10 runners for men and women are all born in Kenya or Ethiopia, but they're representing 10 different countries. That's what they're trying to stop as well, to make sure that the sport retains its integrity. That's the first thing, but also that these abuses where these athletes are giving up on their nationality, they're not then offered nationality, lifetime nationality for their adopted country, so they also fall between the cracks there. So this is both trying to protect the athlete as well as the integrity of the sport. But of course, there will be some concern athletes, and that we'll have to wait to see what the criteria is that this working group are working on, and when that criteria is put in place. But certainly in the short term, there will be a few concerned athletes, but again, it's about trying to retain the integrity of the sport first and foremost.
Dan, thanks for that insight. CGTN's Dan Williams joining us live there from Madrid in Spain.